Okay, so in yesterday's class, we were lastly discussing this half-wave rectifier. What is the efficiency of half-wave rectifier? And now in today's class, we'll be starting with full-wave rectifier. Okay, so don't go with this PPT like this is just the screenshot from the book. I don't have enough time to prepare an PPT. No issue. I'll manage with this. So now, the very first question is why we need a full wave rectifier. So in yesterday's class, we have seen that with the your half wave rectifier, the issue there are two issues with your half wave rectifier. The first one is the power transfer is less, and the other one is pulsating output is there. Like pulsating output is there. Okay, so to sort out this issues, what we can have is a full wave rectifier. So very first question, what is a full wave rectifier? So a full wave rectifier is basically a rectifier which will produce an output for the full cycle. So if this is your input, the output at the DC end would look like this. Okay, so that would be your first half cycle, and again we'll get the second half cycle as well as along with your first cycle. Okay, so this is a full wave, so you are getting the output for the full cycle of your input. That's why it is known as a full wave rectifier. So how that full wave rectifier works, or what are the configuration, like how can I set up my full wave rectifier? So to set up the full wave rectifier, uh, there are two methods. Very first method is a center tap method, and the other one is a bridge method. Okay, so what is the center tap method? So in center tap method, basically you have one transformer, and that transformer is a special kind of transformer with a center tap facility. So what is that center tap transformer? It looks like this basically. Okay, so this is my input coil and there would be my output coil, but my output coil have a center tap on here. Sorry. Let me directly show it over here. See, this is the center tap transformer. Okay, so there are input coil as well as this is my secondary coil. I can say this is my primary and secondary. But on secondary coil, you have a tap at the center. Okay, so at this point, your potential would be 0. Okay, so let us say I am applying 0 to 10 volt here. So what I'll get on the output would be -5 over here and like +5 over here. Kind of that voltage I'll get. Okay, so this is the scenario of your center tap transformer. So this is how your center tap transformer work. So basically, sorry, not -5. You'll get 10 -10 over here and 10 over here as well. Okay, so you'll get like double voltage, but one with the positive polarity and the other one would be negative polarity. Okay, when polarity changes, this polarity will change along. Like when your cycle changes and like 0 appears over here, and then there will be a 10 over here. At that time, the -10 will become +10 and the 10 become -10. Okay, so basically your input looks like here on this side, the output would be like this on the output side. I am talking about this two coils right now. Okay, so output across this coil would look like this, and output across the other coil would be mirror image or flipped image of the input. Okay, so this is the facility of center tap. So how you can use this center tap transformer? So now this feature of center tap that we have is basically used to transfer the power during both the cycle or both the half waves, I can say. Okay, so how it is, like how it is useful. So as I have drawn this figure, okay, during one cycle my input is like this from one coil, and during the other cycle my like, so this is basically input of both the coil. Let us say this is my coil 1 and this is my coil 2 side. There are basically coil 1 and 2 is single coil only, but I am naming this part as coil 1 and this part is coil 2, let us say. So what will happen now? During a first half cycle, during your first half, your coil 1 is in positive bias, like is it in positive? So if I connect a diode over there, I can flow the current, or my current diode would be in forward bias, and I can pass a current through here. And during the negative cycle, or during the other half, or the second half of the input, this is my input, okay? So during the other half of my input, when my coil 1 becomes negative, at the same time my coil 2 is positive right now. So again, if I connect a diode over there, I can pass on a current. So now how is the actual physical connection? So at both the end I have one diode connect, and in the center I have my load. So this is my load. Okay, so both the current will come in like this. Okay, so during the positive half cycle, this will be positive, this would be, let us say, negative. Okay, it would be actually a ground, but let us say negative. In that case, this is in forward bias and my current can flow like this. And during the negative cycle, my current will flow from here to here. So this is how you can give, you can have a full wave rectified voltage. So my output would look like this. Okay, during my first cycle and during my second cycle. Okay, so this is how you can create a full wave rectifier using a center tap transformer. But there is a little bit, like there are more than one issue with this configuration. There are more than one issues with the configuration. The very first basic issue is the voltage appearing across this diode or this diode. Whenever either of these two diode is in blocking mode, or during the negative or reverse bias, when that are in reverse bias, at that time the voltage appearing of across this diode, like either be it D1 or D2, would be 2 times my maximum voltage. Okay, why it is like that? So let us assume this is my VM. Okay, so VM will appear over here as well as over here, but here I'll have negative VM. So what will happen? This negative VM, that means negative positive polarity of VM. Other than that, if you look at this circuit over here, so there would be one more VM that would be a positive. Okay, so VM plus VM, there is 2 VM. So whenever any diode, either diode D1 or D2, is in blocking mode, at that time the peak inverse voltage is twice the maximum voltage. Okay, so this is only during your peak, at your peak of your input. At this point and this point, you get 2 times the maximum voltage of your input waveform. So that's the first issue. And the second is, uh, it is very difficult to locate the center tap. Okay, to get exact this point. Okay, to exact get the center of this secondary coil, it is very difficult. So construction wise, it is a complex construction of center tap transformer. The DC output is small, as each diode utilize only one half of the transformer secondary voltage. Okay, so the diode will only occupy half of the transformer secondary voltage. Okay, so your output would be less, and the third one is the peak inverse voltage. So these three are the disadvantage of this center tap transformer. Now, how to improve this disadvantage? Uh, Someone has to ask a question. So to solve this problem, we have a full bridge rectifier. Okay, so you must have seen this kind of configuration. This is known as a full bridge configuration. So how this full bridge configuration works? So in this full bridge configuration, you have basically 4 diodes connected in parallel, like two pairs of diode connected in series, and that are connected in parallel. Okay, so which series I'm talking about? This is my series 1 and this is my series 2, and that two series are connected in parallel, and in between that, okay, from AC side you can see this is a series, okay, and in between that there is a load connection. So now how this full wave rectifier works? So the full wave rectifier basically works with the same principle during half cycle. Okay, during one half cycle, let us say right now I am in first cycle of my input. Okay, this is my first cycle. So this terminal being positive, this is negative. So again, I'll get this positive and this negative. Okay. So due to that, right now I am higher potential at this point, and let us say a lower potential or negative potential on the other side. So we'll have two diode. Okay, just for simplification, I'm connecting this circuit. So this common are basically closing the circuit over here. Okay, so what will happen? Uh, this terminal is positive. That means your D1 right now is in forward bias, and same way here D3, your anode cathode, your cathode is at negative. That means your D3 is also in forward bias. Okay, so your current will basically flow from this circuit from D1. Okay, from D1 it will go to here, from here it will go to back, and from D3 it will come back and it will go like this. Okay, so basically your current is having this path from D1. Okay, is flowing through this closed circuit, and then from RL it is going back through D3. Okay, so your RL current in RL is right now in this direction during your first cycle. Why I'm marking this current? Because the current will decide whether I'm generating DC or AC. If the current is in unidirection, that's a DC. Okay. Now let's see what happens during the other cycle. So what will happen during the other cycle? Again, let me close this circuit first. So during the negative cycle or second cycle of my input, this terminal will be in negative and this terminal will be on positive. Okay. So due to that, your D4 and your D2 would be in forward bias. Okay. So as this is positive terminal, my current will start from this bottom point. It will flow through D2 again. It will go through this loop, and again it will flow through RL. It will go to B through D4. It will go back. Okay, so now see, the current is changing in this line. Okay, previously current was going like this, and right now it is going like this. But what's the important point? The current through this resistor RL is again in the same direction, and that is going like this. During your second cycle also, your current is in same direction. That means you are generating DC, and during both the cycle you will get the output like this. Okay, so this is my output waveform, be it VL or IL. Why? Because this is a resistive load, and that's why your V and I will be in phase. So this is how you can generate your voltage in your full bridge rectifier, or you can rectify using a full bridge rectifier. Now there are some disadvantage of this rectifier as well. Okay, so let us see that. So this is the explanation, like this is the same operation that we have seen. Okay. And then this is the issue of peak inverse voltage. Now what would be the peak inverse voltage here? So what would be the peak inverse voltage? Again, the two times of the voltage will appear across this, but there are two diodes, so you'll only have the peak inverse voltage would be Vm. Let us see it over here. Say this is the scenario. This is the Vm. Okay, this is D2 and D4. So across both the diode, you will only have voltage Vm during a reverse bias. Okay. So how I get this circuit? Basically, whenever this is conducting, I can show it as a closed line. I can show this as a closed line, okay, or a basic conducting line. So if I redraw this circuit, what I'll get D2 like this. The same way, D4 is connected over here. So again, D4 can be drawn like this. So this circuit is basically drawn from here. So this is the scenario during a reverse bias on D2 and D4. Same way, D1 and D4 will appear over in the next cycle. And again, the voltage appearing across that two would be Vm only. So the peak inverse voltage of each diode is equal to the maximum secondary voltage. So that's not an issue. Okay? But what are the issues is it requires 4 diodes. So the complexity of circuit is a little bit higher because you require a 4 diode. Okay, and you have to take care of the connection. Like uh, uh, it looks like bridge only. See, it's look like bridge only. Okay, but one direction is connected in this way, other one in this way, opposite. Okay, so if you accidentally make the wrong connection, like if I connect like this, in that case the circuit won't work. So that's the only disadvantage. Otherwise, center tap is not required. Output is twice of the center tap circuit, and the PIV is one half of that of center tap circuit. Okay, this is in comparison with center tap circuit, because in center tap we have two VM. Here you have only VM. Now let's try to derive the efficiency of this output. Before that, we must understand what would be the output frequency. So output frequency of a full wave rectifier is always the double of the input. So if you have 50 hertz input, then you'll get this 100 hertz frequency on your output. Why it is like that? We know that we say a frequency when something repeats over a time. So for your sine wave repeat after 360-degree. Okay, so it will be copying from this point up to this point. It's the unique waveform. Then from this point onwards, it is a copy. So this is a one cycle, and you can see the one cycle time is 360-degree. Okay, or let us say this is t. Okay, but in full wave, when you get the output, your cycle will start from this point. Okay, and it will end over here, and then from this point only you are getting a new cycle. Okay, so basically your time is 180-degree, you can say, or you can say it is t by 2. So that's why your frequency, output frequency of your full wave rectified output is 2 times input frequency, because your cycle time is only half of the input time. And that's the main point of this full wave rectified wave. Now you can say DC cannot have a frequency. It's not like that. When something occurring on cyclic time, you can have a frequency of that. So this is again a DC wave, but what do you have here is you have a repeating value. So I can represent this in form of frequency. Now let's try to calculate the efficiency of full wave rectifier. So again, we know that I is equal to V by RF plus RL, where V is your RMS value. It is Vm sin theta. Okay. So now I have output like this, and I am going to now whenever you get this average value at that time, what you are going to do? You are going to consider this as your cycle time. Okay. For half wave, what we have done? For half wave, my output was like this. So I was considering this as a cycle time. So I was getting this equation 1 over 2 pi. Sorry, this button press accidentally. 1 over 2 pi integration of 0 to pi of something. Okay. But here what I'll get for full wave rectifier is 1 over pi and integration over 0 to pi. Okay, that would be the difference. So I can directly write this equation from the previous uh, slide, like previous, not previous slide, but previous uh, what can I say, derivation. Okay, this derivation we have performed. IAV IDC for half wave. So half wave has this equation 1 over 2 pi integration 0 to pi I d theta. I is not going to change. Okay, I is same for both the scenario, Vm sin theta by RF plus RL. So same way, if I do this for only this part 1 over pi, what I'll get? I'll get the whatever value is here, I'll get the double value. Okay, so what I can do is rather than divide it by 2, I can say it is 2 by pi. Okay, so at the end, what I'll get is 2 Im by pi. Okay, whatever value is for half cycle. Okay, this is for half cycle. Now that cycle is repeating twice. So I can say that would be 2 times of Im by pi. That's why this equation is accurate. If you derive that using that Im sin theta, then again you will get the same equation. No issue in that. So what would be my DC power output? My DC would be IDC square into RL. That is 2 Im by pi into RL. And what about my AC? We know that AC value is I square RMS into RF by RL. Now here your RMS is Im by root 2. Why? Because you are having a full wave. That's why you will get Im by root 2. There was question yesterday why it was Im by 2. We have derived this equation earlier, if you remember. We have derived this equation. Where is it? Yeah, this one.
Yes, sir.
We have derived this equation during chapter number 5. Okay, let me quickly show it to you where it was. During chapter 5, we have already performed that equation. See, this is the equation. Average value of half wave rectified current. So here we have derived all these equations. Okay, so it is Im by pi, then RMS value of half wave and full wave. So this is the full wave. Okay, and then you will have a half wave. So this is the derivation for that. Same derivation will be there, and you will get at the end you will get I is equal to Im by pi, or you can say RMS is equal to maximum by 2 for half wave. Same way for full wave, you will get this equation for a full wave cycle. You will get this value Im by root 2.
सर
Go
वो
ahead.
सर वो पीपीटी करो तो एक मिनट आरएमएस वाली सर
Okay.
इसके बाद वो एग्जांपल है इसके
Uh,
बाद
well, this one.
इसमें वो आईएम वो चेंज होता है ना वो बोला था हाफ वे के लिए वो अलग लेना था एक एग्जांपल है एक हाँ
I
यार
surely remember that. Uh, just do one thing. We are not going to waste time over here because we have only like today's lecture and the next lecture. We have to complete syllabus first. So just do one thing. Take a screenshot. I have already uploaded this, and wherever you are, just take a screenshot and let me know. I'll get back to you. Okay. So basically, this is the thing. So this is the value for your full wave, rectified wave. So now I can get directly this PDC by PAC. Okay, I'm going to put this values, and if you derive that whole, you get 0.812, and that is almost like double the value of half wave. So in half wave, you have the efficiency somewhere around 40%. It is now improved to somewhere around 81.2%. So the power delivered would be much more in a full bridge wave compared to your uh, half wave rectifier. Okay, so that's the thing, but here you need more number of diodes. Okay, and either you require a center tap transfer or you require more number of diodes. That's the point. Okay, so this is all about a half wave rectifier. Now if we have seen this as output waveform, okay, so this is my output waveform. So how to filter this out? So the first thing is that this is DC, but this is a pulsating DC. So you can get a smooth line like this, okay, in ideal scenario, but in actual scenario what you can get is this. Okay, it would be still pulsating, but the range would be very less. So that range would be very less. Okay, so how to do this? So to do this, to get this waveform from this waveform, you need one circuit known as filtering circuit. What is a filtering circuit? So inside a filtering circuit, there is a combination of L and C, inductor and capacitors. Okay, most of the time for very basic for like very low cost application where you do not worry about this output waveform much, at that time you are only going to use C. But if it is like a bit expensive device and you require a particular wave shape, or your value of DC should be in some particular range, in that case you are going to have the high-end filters, and it will compromise RLC, combination of RLC. Okay, so before that, yeah, let me quickly show it to you how we are going to use this filter. Okay, it is not a part of here, but you can do that using filter. You can smoothen out your waveform. Okay, other than that, there is one more concern about this rectified AC voltages. So when you rectify from AC to DC, you get the pulsating DC, and that pulsating DC has one particular characteristic, and that characteristic can be measured using a ripple factor. So what is a ripple factor? The output of rectifier consisting of DC component. Okay, so it is DC, no issue in that. Okay, so what do I mean by DC is a straight line like this. and it has AC component also known as the ripple. So okay, it is basically combination of this two. So why it is shown like this? Because you have a waveform like this. This is my zero line, this is my average line, and on average I have this pulsating values. Okay, so this is just average value of this waveform. So basically I do have two components here. One is a DC component and the other one is AC component. So a ripple factor is basically the ratio between AC to DC component. Okay, so ripple factor is nothing but IAC by IDC. But why we need that factor? Like how important it? So the basically what ripple factor provide, it provides the information about the quality of the DC generated. So if your ripple factor is less, if a ripple factor is less, you have a good quality of DC output. Okay, that means basically the pulses will be less in that case, and if your ripple factor is higher, in that case the output will be like much more deteriorated output is there. uh, so that is all about ripple factor, that ripple factor says. How to find out that? To find out that, there is a mathematical analysis, or this theory is that the output current of a ripple factor containing DC as well as AC component, the undesired AC component has a frequency of 100 Hz. We have just proved it. How? Because we use, like we can have our own example where we have 50 Hz input. If I rectify it, I will get 100 Hz output, and it's called the ripple. It fluctuations superimposed on the DC component. So this is my DC component, and the fluctuations are superimposed on this. By definition, the effective value of total load current is given by RMS value, and RMS value is part of AC plus DC. Okay, this AC is just due to this ripple. So IDC plus IAC. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to find out the IAC, and then from like once I get that, I'll get my ripple factor. So IAC is under root I square RMS minus I square DC. I'm dividing both by IDC. So what I'll get, IAC divided by IDC is equal to 1 upon IDC into under root I square IRMS minus IDC square. I'll take this inside, and what I'll get is ripple factor is equal to under root IRMS divided by IDC whole square minus 1, which is this RMS value and which is this DC value. These both are related. This is related to your AC and this is DC that you have calculated. So this IDC is basically this part. Okay, and IAC is this part, your IRMS value. Okay, so using that too, using your input AC current and output DC current, you can calculate your ripple factor, and your ripple factor will just provide you one information: the quality of DC produced. If your ripple factor is very less, in that case, your DC is very good, like it has very less deterioration. Okay, what do you mean by deterioration is just this thing, how quickly it is pulsating. Okay, it may pulsate like this. Okay, so this is much more deteriorated wave. Okay, where the values changes in huge range, but here my value is changing in very small range. So obviously ripple would be less over here and much more in this case. So that's how you can use your ripple factor to find out the inside information of the power generated, or the quality of power generated using rectification. Now for half wave, these values are calculated based on half wave and full wave. Okay, so for half wave we know that IRMS is Im by 2 and IDC is Im by pi. We have calculated, like we have derived this too. So if you put this values inside here, we'll get 1.21 as a ripple factor, and it is clear that your AC component exceeds the DC component in the output of a half wave rectification. This results in a greater pulsation. So basically, if you look at the waveform of this half wave, we have this waveform. Okay, so this is very deteriorating, like it just goes to 0 and then comes again. Okay, but here in case of full wave rectifier, you have like pulses are still there, but the power transfer is continuous, so you will get less ripple over here. So if you calculate the ripple factor for full wave, we again know that Im by root 2 and 2 Im by pi is the value. If you put that value, your 0.48 is the ripple factor. Now you can see that's quite low compared to this value. Okay, so this is quite low compared to this value, but again you can achieve lesser than this as well using a filter technology. This shows that in the output of a full wave rectifier, the DC component is more than AC. Okay. Now there is one example over here. Not sure whether it is covered full. Yeah, a power supply A delivers 10 volt DC with a ripple of 0.5 volt RMS, while the power supply B delivers 25 volt DC with a ripple of 1 millivolt RMS, which is better power supply. Okay. So in this case, it is directly calculated VAC divided by DC. We know that VAC is 0.5. Okay, so 0.5 divided by DC is 10 volt into 100 is this 100 is just to convert in percentage. So here the ripple factor is 5%, but here my ripple factor is very less and it is only 0.004%. So obviously your power supply B is better at supplying a DC power. That's how you can compare two power supplies using based on the ripple factor values. Okay, now this is equivalent circuit of the diode. Like why this PPT is there, why this slide is there, because if you want to write the equation of VF or your drop of your what is it, a diode, in that case that drop is like made up of two part. The first part is V0 and second is IFRF. We know what is RF. RF is the internal resistance of your diode, but along with that and due to that internal resistance there would be some current flowing through diode. So IFRF is the one drop. Along with that there is a one more drop inside a diode, and that drop is due to the potential barrier created using PN junction diode. Okay, so when you form the PN junction diode, there is a doping layer, and due to that doping there is a depletion created in between, and to come over that depletion you require some specific voltage. So you can represent this diode as this form, like a battery along with a resistance. You can replace the circuit of diode. Okay, but here you can see this battery is drawn against the like current. So current is flowing this direction, but my potential of battery is trying to move current in this way. So basically you have to overcome this potential difference, then and then you can pass the current. So let us say if this potential is 0.3 volt, so until your supply can provide 0.3 volt, you cannot pass current in this direction. Why? Because you cannot able to break this depletion region. Okay, so you have to break that barrier between PN junction diode. So this is how you can represent in terms of equivalent circuit of your PN junction diode or crystal diode. Okay, and this is again a simple circuit, but this is the ideal scenario where you do not have your RF. Okay, but in actual scenario you always have this RF component present. So along with the current, if you measure the voltage across your diode, the voltage will slightly increase. That increase is due to increasing current, and when the current increases, IFRF value will obviously increasing due to this resistance. So IR drop is increasing across the diode when you increase the current in the diode. Otherwise this remains same, or the okay, and these are the two values. See, for silicon diode the value is 0.7 volt, and for germanium diode it is 0.3 volt. So to conduct through a germanium diode you require minimum 0.3 volt, and to conduct through your silicon diode you minimum require 0.7 volt. After 0.7 volt your conduction will start. Okay, up to 0.7 volt it will be in blocking mode. Okay, though it is in forward bias, but the depletion region is not breakdown. It's not broken yet. So you have to take care of this two values. Okay, now there are two examples, but in your question bank the example is related to Zener diode and this is related to simple diode, so I am not going into this right now. We'll directly cover the ones with the Zener diode. Okay, so I'm skipping this part. Yeah, this is the filter circuit. Okay, how a filter is connected. So once you have your rectifier output, there would be a filter circuit, and once you filter it out you will get this kind of waveform. Okay, from this waveform you will get this waveform, but this is the ideal scenario. As I've said, your filter is combination of inductor and capacitor. But this is the ideal scenario. In actual case, you won't get this kind of waveform. But it would be still pulsating, but with the narrow range. This is a pulsation in big wide range. It is starting from 0 and it is going up to Vm, or peak value of your input voltage. But if you filter it out, it would be somewhere around here. Let me draw it for you, like how it will look like if you filter it out. Depending on the filter quality, uh, the waveform might change. Okay, so I can have this kind of waveform where my pulses is quite smaller in terms of amplitude. So this part or here my pulse is from 0 to Vm, or here my pulse is somewhere from not actually 0 but somewhere from here to here. So I have a better ripple factor in this case, or my power would be much more stable or smoother in this scenario. So you can use a filter for that. Now we'll study one more type of diode, and that is Zener diode. So we know that uh, if I highly dope the substance, in that case, a particular characteristic is earned in breakdown. So whenever a breakdown occurs, I can have a very sharp fall in current. Okay, so this is a new point, and once I break down, the reverse characteristic is such that along with my voltage, my current will increase sharply. So this characteristic is provided by a Zener diode. And how a Zener diode made? A Zener diode is likely an ordinary diode only, but it is properly doped so as to have a sharp breakdown voltage. So breakdown voltage is sharp in case of Zener diode. That's the point. A Zener diode is always reverse connected. Okay, so it is just used for protection of some equipments. So it is always connected in reverse bias. A Zener diode has a sharp breakdown voltage called Zener voltage or VZ. When your forward bias, its characteristics are just as of any ordinary diode. So in forward bias, we are not going to use Zener diode, but its special application is in reverse bias. The Zener diode is not immediately burnt just because it has entered the breakdown region. As long as the external circuit connected to the diode limits the diode current to less than burnout value, the diode will not burn out. So permanent damage will be not there. So in other diode, the permanent damage, like diode blows out, but here it will not burn out. Okay, burnout means it will actually turn black and you will smell something. But in case of Zener diode, it won't burn out, uh, provided the support is provided by the other connecting circuitry. So these are the application of the Zener diode as a voltage stabilizer or voltage regulator. So how we are going to do that? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect a Zener diode in reverse manner like this. See, this is my positive terminal. Okay, this is my positive terminal and this is my negative. So I have connected my Zener diode in reverse bias. You can see. Okay, so when you connect the Zener diode in reverse bias, after your voltage Vz. What was Vz? A Zener diode has a sharp breakdown voltage called as Zener voltage, Vz. So this is my Vz. Okay, this is my Vz. So how it is done? A Zener diode can be used as a voltage regulator to provide constant voltage from a source whose voltage may vary over sufficient range. The circuit arrangement is shown in figure. So this is how you can arrange that circuit. So what are the two parameters? See, there are two resistors. One is this resistor and the other one is this resistor. This is the current limiting resistor, and this resistor is actually my load RL, and I'm going to make sure the voltage level across this is remains stabilized. Okay. So what is the scenario? Scenario is that my input is a little bit distorted or noisy. It changes with the time. So to stabilize this changes along with time, what I'm going to do, I'm going to connect Zener diode across my load. So this is my load and I have connected a Zener diode, but in a reverse way or reverse bias. And then once uh, achieve, like once you have that EI is greater than VZ, once it is achieved, this would be breakdown. Like Zener diode will break down, a breakdown will occur, and afterward that this will work as a pure voltage source. Or what I can say is, once a breakdown occurs, we know that when breakdowns occurs, uh, yeah, breakdowns occurs at this point. Let us say Vz. Once I improve or once I go higher values on Vz, let us say I have this value, but you can see the current is sharply increasing at this point only. Okay, that means my voltage Vz remains constant. Same way here across your resistor RL, this voltage Vz will remain stable, though I still increase EI. Okay, because all the other current will pass through this circuit. Okay? All the other current will pass through this circuit, and whatever is voltage dropped across this diode would be only stabilized voltage that is appearing across my load. Okay, the detail here is here. Suppose the input voltage increase since the Zener is in breakdown region. The Zener diode is equivalent to battery Vz. It is clear that output voltage remains increase in the value of total current I. The Zener will conduct the increased current in I while the load current remains constant. Hence, output voltage E0 remains constant. So whatever is like if I increment a current EI, so the current will increase in circuit, no doubt in that. But what will happen? Whatever is the increment in the current will be taken care by this Zener diode. How? Because Zener diode is broken down and it broke down at Vz, or it can like breakdown occurs at Vz, and once the breakdown occurs, all the current will pass through this diode. And when the scenario is different, like when your EI is less than Vz, at that time this uh, diode is on non-picture. Like when your EI is less than Vz, at that time the Zener diode works as an open circuit. So at that time circuit looks like this. This is my EI. Okay, provided this condition is matched, EI is less than Vz. At that time, no breakdown over here, so no current will pass through here. And due to that, if there is no current in this circuit, I can redraw this circuit like this. So here, at that time, whatever is the voltage on this side, all the current will pass through your load resistance RL. Okay, so this is about the Zener diode. Okay, we'll stop here for the today's class, and we'll take the transistor in the next class. Okay, if you have any question, you can ask the questions.
Sir,
Yeah, go ahead.
sir, this chapter is going to come in exam or not?
This chapter is not going to be part of your examination.